Vanakkam, Namaste, and blessings to everyone. This is Dr. Bhairavi Balasubramanian, PhD, the Sky Priestess. So, I am trying out a new phone, which is exciting for me because I never really buy much for myself. Um, that and those damn notifications were annoying me way too much, and there was just no way of turning them off. So, hopefully, the new phone is better for our purposes. And oh God, it just whistled. My apologies. I am still trying to whatchamacallit to figure this out. Technology is not my strong suit. Okay, so let's see if this is working. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone see me? Okay, how is this going? I need some commentary from you. All right, I see a wave. Hello. Hello, Latoya. Hello, Sunny Flowers. Can you see and can you hear me okay? Yes, you can hear. Okay, hello, Family Guy. All right. So it's nice to see all of you. And let's get started. And apologies, I have not finished setting up my new phone. So if you hear a choo-choo type sound, I'll figure out a way to get that sorted. So let's get started on today's topic. And today's topic is really about uncertainty, discernment, and the search for truth. Now, with recent events that have been happening in the world, and I don't want to center this discussion on that because let's look at what's happening around that. We've actually seen a lot of truth coming out in terms of the different ways people interpret spirituality or use spirituality as a means of gauging truth, as a means of putting different truths into the world out there. And really, there's chaos. Now, this isn't new, but moments of intense public focus around key events that are happening in the world or events that are being televised across the world bring up all of these questions, and they bring them up in very powerful ways. So, really, what I'm seeing right now in the space that I hold is a need to talk about what do we mean by truth in the spiritual on the spiritual journey. How do we access truth, and why do we need to be careful when using that word? So I actually wrote out a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm going to be referring back to what I've written, just so I make sure that I've got all those points down. So first of all, a lot of us feel very uncertain with the world right now, and that's completely understandable. Everything seems to be changing, not just in 2020, but we've been feeling it for a couple of years now. Whatever sense of identity, whatever sense of status quo, whatever sense of belonging, whatever sense of just a general understanding of one's worldview has been very, very, very critically challenged, not just for me, not just for you, but for all of us as a whole. I would actually pinpoint 2006 as a time where a lot of our ideas of truth were thrown into stark, stark, stark question. And we've really just been reeling from that since. And what has also happened is that more and more people are trying to find ways to get back to older parts or in human history, in the stories of human cultures across the world, because those were times where they felt more stable, more centered. They have this idea of a golden, glorious past because it gives them a sense of self that they can then say, okay, I don't need to question this. This isn't changing all of the time. So, really, in response to a great deal of increased ambiguity and increased uncertainty in the world, people are looking for other sources of truth with the capital T. Now, part of this is religion. Religion has always stepped in that sense to fill in the gap in moments of crisis and uncertainty. Part of it is spirituality. Part of it is conspiracy theories. Honestly, I think they're becoming another religion on their own. But effectively, we are looking for answers, and that's not bad at the surface. But what tends to happen when a person fixates themselves on truth with a capital T, irrespective of what source it's coming from, or even what they feel themselves, truth with a capital T, the moment you fixate on things that way, you are less likely to be interested in any idea of accuracy and more likely to be interested with a particular self image that comes with believing a certain truth with a capital T. Let me give you an example. So, for example, I was reading about, why conspiracy theorists are just, increasing in numbers these days. How are people able to believe the things that 20, 30 years ago you would look at it and quite blatantly you would be able to say this is not supported by the evidence, what is going on. Now, some of these investigations independently have made people more critical about the world we live in, and that is okay. And some things are just flat out crazy. But the question is, why are people more likely to go into something that used to be seen as the fringe position? And the same thing can be argued for spirituality. The same thing can be argued for astrology. I'm not, saying that my discipline or my work is exempt from this critique. It is because people are looking for ways that they can establish their self identity in ways that are less likely and less able to be challenged. Now, when we look at a lot of scandals surrounding religious institutions, surrounding political institutions, surrounding norms that we assumed for many, many years to be, the standard, to be the way culture existed, to be the status quo, we didn't have to ask those questions. Now we're being forced to ask those questions. And so people are retreating into little bubbles, which give them the space to not have to ask those questions. Unfortunately, some people are using the name of spirituality to do this. And as a spiritualist and being with, I would say, fairly intensive academic training, this is something that I find very, very, very disturbing. Because the moment we make truth about finding a stable sense of self identity, we divorce it from any real requirement to be able to reflect whatever reality or version of the world we're seeing, or for that version of reality to have any consistency in a way that is generally applicable. So, in other words, truth with a capital T becomes an entirely personal experience, but one that is being used to create a public narrative or a general claim on society. And that's where things get pushed into hyperdrive for me, at the very least. But I can talk about that for a while. But what I want to talk about here is, what can we then do as spiritualists, as seekers of truth, to actually find ways to identify what truth is for us, and to go about it in a way that actually has some meaning. Because, like the word love, the word truth has been co opted. That's why you are never ever going to see me claim that what I'm saying is the absolute truth. I'm very aware that what I'm sharing with you is my opinion. And I lose nothing by acknowledging that this is my opinion. You're not going to see me in the way I see the world as the basis of making public claims in society or on public funds or whatever, 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 because I am very, very certain that that's the one thing I'm certain about. The way I see the world is my opinion of the world. It may be reflective in a certain set of facts that can be discernible, and sometimes facts are not always some things you can touch and hold. Sometimes it's patterns of reality that we see different people corroborating over time. But it's so important just to be able to say, this is what I think is happening, as opposed to, this is it, this is the truth, this is the fact, this is the reality, this is what's happening now, and you have to believe it, otherwise you're stupid. And I see that happening too. And that doesn't help. It really doesn't help. Now, if we are interested in talking about dissolving the ego to find truth in spirituality, we've got to dissolve the ego, not find pockets of, little clusters of belief and groups that get together and, yes, 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 we believe this. Yes, 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 we have special knowledge. Yes, 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 this is the truth. That's not called dissolving the ego. That is replacing the individual ego with a group ego, which arguably is worse in certain ways. So, what do you do when you are looking and the world seems uncertain? The thing is, you have to look, and look again. Now, sometimes that's research, sometimes that's going to credible sources, whether it's an academic, whether it is a social activist who's observed something for 20, 30, 40 years, whether it's just reading different people's opinions. That's one way of collecting data. Another thing that you can do is you can really just feel into your body and see, okay, where do I have resonance with this? And sometimes the resonance that you feel with something that you read is not because the thing is true. but you may actually, sorry about the notifications, I'll figure out how to turn it off in this new phone, but um, you will literally have to, whatchamacallit, you will have to realize where those resonances are coming from and whether or not that has to do with who you are now or even past life trauma. Because resonance is also another very overused word. When you are resonating with something, it simply means that you and it are are experiencing a shared moment in a field that connects the two of you. That doesn't necessarily make it true. It means that there's a reaction. So whether it's doing, research through academics, whether it's doing research by, maybe the word is not even research, but having an experience by feeling into your body, these are things that can point you towards finding a way that you can find a road forward. Now, there is something that is a technique. It's a specialized word, but it's a very simple idea. It's called triangulation. You see it in the ethnographic discipline. Now, triangulation simply means that you try to look at things from different perspectives to see if those different perspectives lead you to a common shared space. So that's one of the reasons why, even though I know a lot about astrology, I have to admit that I do. I work with hundreds of asteroids. Most of the time, I don't look at them because using astrology alone can turn you cuckoo. And at the same time, there's a lot that I do know about spirituality, but let me also preface that what I think I know is this much, what I don't know is this much, what I know, what I don't even know that I don't know is this much. So I'm just acknowledging what I do know. But, so I use astrology as one perspective. I use my inner work as another perspective. I use academic research and, best paying attention to what's being said as a third perspective. And then, and only then, do I actually say something. Generally speaking, most of the time. Sometimes I'm just ridiculously pissed off and I say something that also needs to be acknowledged. But this is what triangulation is. You look at different sources and different ways of accessing truth to see if you can find an overlap. And that's what every spiritualist, in their own way, maybe using different ways of knowing, needs to be open to. Another thing that we need to be open to is the willingness to be wrong. I don't mind people who disagree with me because honestly, I think I spend more time looking at the arguments of things that I disagree with rather than things that I do agree with, because I'm not going to learn anything more from the things I already agree with. I look at things that try to invalidate my perspective, because that's another way of me feeling into it, going, am I just holding on to this because my ego needs me to be right? Or am I actually holding on to this because the other side, so to speak, does not have what it needs to make an adequate argument? So that's also when you get to look at your experience and relationship with truth, when you're willing to look at its opposite. By looking at someone else's argument, by looking at someone else's evidence, you do not lose anything. If anything, you might find that your position is actually more credible. But the moment your mind is already closed to accepting the possibility that you might not be wrong, but there might be a different way to look at this, the moment your mind is already shut to this, the conversation is over. There's no path of growth. You've already found a little bubble for yourself in which truth exists, absolute truth exists, and you are special because you have access to that knowledge and nobody else does. And that's why conspiracy theories are so, so, so popular. I mean, believe me, astrology is probably one of the oldest tools in the book to create, a sense of rarefied knowledge that only the privileged few know. And that's one of the reasons why I don't use it as much as I could. Just because it's so easy to say that, this is the absolute law of the universe, this is the way things happen, and you can't move out of it. But that's exactly what we need to question. That's exactly why we need to be using corroboration, why we need to be looking at different points of view. And if we are interested, to be willing to listen to those with other points of view. But again, you're not accepting what they're saying necessarily. You're simply saying, you are a being. I see you as a being. We may have different views, and that's it. And that takes work and that takes time. whether it's in politics, whether it's in other facets of life. But, we're in a very mediatized age. Everyone is performing something. Performance and performativity was one of the core concepts that I was working on when I was doing my thesis. And so if you look it up online, you can actually see a summary of what these words actually mean in the academic context, at least at the time I was writing it. But at all of the time, we are performing to something or another. And it's very, very important for us to be able to look at aspects of that and to be willing to see what is real, what is not real, what is simply what it, is there something that looks like what it is, or is everything covered in some kind of weird veil of disinformation and whatnot, whatnot, whatnot. And it's such a rabbit hole to go down to. It's such a rabbit hole to go down to. It's such a rabbit hole where a person can get lost in that search, which brings me to another point: paralysis. Sometimes, in the name of doing something good, we tend to take in too much information to the point that we reach a state of paralysis. And that is also not helpful. Now, remember, at the start of the year, I said very clearly, and I still stick by it: if you're going to start a major project, wait till the end of the year, at the very least August and September. That is exactly because of the systemic patterns and waves of disinformation that's targeting anything in the public eye right now. And that's why I'm making this video, because people need to be reminded to look, to be willing to look at the opposite, to be willing to question yourselves and to question again. Because honestly, whether it's academia, whether it's spirituality, they're both ridiculously boring. If you look at it at the day to day level, they are ridiculously boring. It is literally chop wood, carry water again and again and again, look at it again, sit and look at it again, and yet again. And that's why sitting in a cave for a couple of decades is not what a lot of people would like to do at this time, because it is that boring. Someone was asking me today about teaching, and I just said I would not be a great teacher for you to work with, because most of the time that is what I would ask you to do: sit with it and look at it and look at it again. But when it comes to collective moments, you also need to be looking at the question of how much of your refusal to engage comes down to not knowing what is truth, how much of your refusal to engage is through paralysis of not being willing to just put your foot down and say, this is where I am, and how much of it is just feeling it's not the right time to act. From an astrological perspective, I would still say wait till the end of the year before you launch any major projects, just because you don't want to get caught up in this. Did I not say this a few months ago? These are the months where you don't want to get caught up with something major. But the caveat is, unless it is extraordinarily important to you and you have checked in multiple ways, whether it's within yourself, whether it's in other people, as in facilitators you trust, to see if this is something that requires your action at this time. And that too is part of a discernment process, because a lot of the time spirituality talks about truth, but what is the point of you realizing transcendental enlightenment in a rainbow light body state if the person next to you is suffering? Spirituality also needs to be met with compassion and with action. But before you take that, you have to first realize, what are you doing with all of this? Where is all of this going? And I know a lot of you know this, but I also know a lot of you need a reminder on this at this time. Just because it is so, so, so sensational to take an extreme position on this. It is so tempting for the ego to want to see itself and its access to knowledge as something special, as something unique, as something everybody else needs to listen to at that time. So, these are questions which everyone on the path needs to look at. This is honestly what I would say, not just because it's me, but also because of what the astrology is saying at this time, because we got a Sun squared Neptune alignment. And the last thing a lot of people want to hear is someone saying, slow down, think about it, consider that you might be wrong, consider that you might be right. And both is okay as long as you've considered it. You are not the same person you were 10 or 20 years ago. Your ideas of truth have changed since then. Your ideas of resonance have changed since then. Your ideas of spirit have changed since then. So do what you can in the present moment, but be open to the idea that you might look back at yourself a year or two from now going, my views on that have changed. And that is also okay. As long as you have that willingness and that humility to be wrong, to not have that sense of absolute certainty, you're more likely to be walking on a path of truth, which maybe doesn't have a capital T, but the small t is enough. That's basically what I wanted to share with you today. Honestly, I'd say the write up on this, which will also be appended in the description box below, has probably got more information and more details. But at the soul, at the heart of what I wanted to say, hopefully I've covered everything. And with respect to this topic, do we have any questions before I log out? Let's see. Giving you a minute. Okay. Nope. Doesn't seem to be any major questions around this. So hopefully the message has sunk through for those of you willing to listen. Very many blessings and much, much, much love to all of you. Just remember, being strong and certain and you know everything that exists in the world is probably not the best space you want to be if you want to walk a path with spirit. Maybe it works for other things, but not this. Take care. Lots of love to everyone. Stay safe. Bye bye, honey.